Chapter 1970, Opinions? Chapter 1970, Opinions. Naturally, Lin Qiu and the other two knew that Yi Futian's decades were exaggerated. After all, they knew that he was not the most honest of people. However, they could not deny the value and worth of those pills. The item class of those pills was such that they were difficult to obtain even in the Dragon Submission Mountain range. Moreover, they were far from something that a person with Yi Futian's cultivation and plane level could create. As such, they were definitely gifts from the daughter of the Supreme Deity. With Yi Futian giving the pills to them, they were naturally grateful. It was a significant favor. "If Brother Yi has any requests in the future, please just let us know," said Ling Yi, who was beside Lin Qiu. The three of them were the sons of the three villa lords of the Dragon Submission Villa. They were also temperamental people who were extremely loyal. Otherwise, the three villa lords would not have been able to stay together for so many years. Yi Futian smiled and said, "With your cultivation and plane levels, the pills can last for some time. They are not so easily refined. You should continue cultivating them and maximize the effects of the pills." "I have nothing at the moment." "All right." Lin Qiu nodded. "Since that is the case, Brother Yi, we will take our leave for now." After that, the three of them turned around to return to their cultivation. The main reason they came this time was that they were utterly stunned by the pill's effect and had to come personally to thank Yi Futian specifically. At that moment, it was true that they had not yet fully refined those pills and could continue cultivating and improving themselves. Yi Futian continued to cultivate in silence. Wangdu remained as busy as ever. The cultivators from the north did not continue causing problems. However, they also did not leave. They had settled down inside Wangdu. Many people understood that the cultivators of the north came specifically for the Wangshan Watchtower. Naturally, the great Yan ancient royal family was behind them, and the royal family had also arrived some time ago. It was just that they had not made an appearance. On this day, the Alchemy Emperor and Goddess Donglai visited Yi Futian together. "Senior brother, is there news?" Yi Futian smiled gently and asked the Alchemy Emperor. The Alchemy Emperor liked Yi Futian's address of him. While his position was respected, being the top alchemy grandmaster of the Taiyuan continent, he always revered Supreme Deity Donglai. Back in the day, he was not considered Supreme Deity Donglai's real disciple, and it had always been a great regret of his. Yi Futian inherited Supreme Deity Donglai's will, so it was naturally proper for him to become the heir. For him to be willing to call him senior brother, the Alchemy Emperor was naturally quite happy. "Yes." The Alchemy Emperor nodded. "News has come from the Wangshan Watchtower. The Wangshan Watchtower will open in 3 days. At that time, everyone who came will have a chance to go. We are the same. By then, you will have to grasp the opportunity to try to meet the Millet Emperor." "Understood." Yi Futian nodded. They had already been there for several days. Naturally, he already knew about things surrounding the Wangshan Watchtower. The Wangshan Watchtower stood at the peak of the city of Wangdu. Every year, practitioners from Wangdu and all other continents who came would have a chance to enter the Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate and even meet the Millet Emperor and listen to his words. It was a tradition that had remained unchanged for many years. Every year, at this time, the Millet Emperor would sit within the Wangshan Watchtower and preach. It was a chance for Renhuangs to reach the Millet Emperor. Initially, they had thought that Yi Futian's status as the heir to Supreme Deity Donglai would be enough for him to meet the Millet Emperor. However, Goddess Donglai did not make that happen. Instead, she wanted to let Yi Futian prove himself first before anything could happen. Apart from that, everyone who came had come for this. Even the great Yan ancient royal family had led a group of powerful cultivators from the north for this. They had remained very quiet over the past few days, so it was highly likely that they were also waiting for this day. There was no way the Wangshan Watchtower was going to be peaceful. Of course, the Wangshan Watchtower had long got wind that the great Yan ancient royal family had arrived. However, they did not need to worry about such things. "Get ready. We'll come and notify you again before we depart," said the Alchemy Emperor. Yi Futian nodded. He did not need to prepare anything, to be honest. His main competitions for this journey to the Wangshan Watchtower were the practitioners of the Dongshao continent. they were not really strong enough to put any pressure on him. The only ones who could threaten him were most likely the top factions, such as the almighty Great Yen ancient royal family. As such, since the beginning, he had been taking it easy when facing the Alchemy Divine Palace and the Qin He Palace. The reason was that he did not care much and did not see them as his opponents. As the news of Wangshan Watchtower spread, Wangdu became a lot busier in an instant. Multiple people began talking. How many Renhuang would have the chance to enter the Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate and study the Great Path? How many would have the opportunity to meet the Millet Emperor? To receive the teachings of the Millet Emperor? However, before all this, the Wangshan Watchtower also had a commotion. The commotion concerning the Great Yen ancient royal family. They were not friendly and had kept quiet over the past few days. It was highly likely that they were waiting for this day. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. For practitioners, it was too short. When the day came, the entire city of Wangdu was effervescence. At dawn, countless people were already moving in the skies. Every cultivator was headed in the same direction. From afar, one could vaguely see a towering ancient palace far away in the direction they were heading. It looked like the reflection of a divine ancient imperial city in the clouds in the mortal realm. In the skies of Wangdu, auras filled the sky. Some glided across the sky, others moved on their swords, and some rode on beasts. On this day, in a pavilion inside Wangdu, a figure exited a room. The figure raised his head and looked toward a place far away. Then, in a flash, multiple shadows had entered and landed in several locations nearby. However, no one could be seen anywhere. "Make preparations," said the figure in the room calmly. "Understood." Neat and uniform voices came from his surroundings. Then, multiple shadows disappeared one after another. On this day, the entire city of Wangdu seemed to be moving. The city was bustling like never before. According to legends, in the beginning, the Wangshan Watchtower was only a few walls. The Millet Emperor and Supreme Deity Donglai discussed the Great Path amidst these walls. However, as the years passed, the Wangshan Watchtower had become a holy land, the strongest force across the Dongxiao continent. It sat at the center of Wangdu and occupied a large space. Looking in from the outside, it was impossible to see the border. One could only see an endless and empty space. If one tried hard enough, one could maybe vaguely see the walls of the Great Path that pierced into the sky, as well as several magnificent towering ancient buildings. And standing at the peak of everything, the ancient palace that floated in the sky, that was the place where the Millet Emperor cultivated, according to legend. It was said that behind the floating empty palace was the old Wangshan Watchtower, which had remained perfectly preserved even now. At that moment, multiple practitioners had arrived outside the Wangshan Watchtower. One could not see the end of the crowd in one look. However, most were here as observers. Normal people were not qualified to enter the Wangshan Watchtower. Otherwise, the Wangshan Watchtower would have a problem with overcrowdedness. Only the top factions from the different continents and the top factions of Wangdu were qualified to recommend some Renhuangs to enter the Wangshan Watchtower to train. The recommendations by the factions were always the strongest and those with the highest potentials. As such, a competition like this would occur every year. At that time, a group arrived. Their robes fluttered in the wind as if they were deities. Countless gazes fell upon the group. Then, someone uttered, "The deities from the Goddess Peak have arrived." The Goddess Peak was a top faction of Wangdu. Naturally, they could make recommendations to enter the Wangshan Watchtower and meet the Millet Emperor to receive his teachings. Entering the Wangshan Watchtower did not mean joining the Wangshan Watchtower. It simply meant entering to cultivate, train, and receive teachings. If one were strong enough to interest the Wangshan Watchtower, one could also be selected to join the Wangshan Watchtower. "Good morning, dear deities." Another group of strong cultivators had arrived. They were the cultivators from the Alchemy Divine Palace. Many practitioners followed them as if a myriad of stars surrounding and supporting the moon. Cultivators from all sides also went up to greet them. They all seemed very formal and polite. After that came the Heavenly Battle Palace, the Qin He Palace, and many other factions. There were also the factions from the continents surrounding the Dongxiao continent. At that time, another group of cultivators came from the sky and landed outside the Wangshan watchtower. The one in the lead was the Alchemy Emperor. It was Yi Futian's group. In an instant, many people shifted their gaze toward them. Many cultivators from the Alchemy Divine Palace gently bowed and greeted the Alchemy Emperor, meeting the Alchemy Emperor. Their voices instantly attracted even more gazes. The Alchemy Emperor had arrived. That meant that the white-haired youth beside him was probably Yi Lionian. Meeting the Alchemy Emperor. Many people bowed to the Alchemy Emperor. However, no one knew if they were sincere or not. Some looked toward Yi Futian. Then, someone said, "Senior Alchemy Emperor, this person said that he is not a practitioner of Wangdu and has no connection to the Dongshao continent, refusing to take part in a battle. For someone who acts like that, why should you bring him here?" The one who spoke was a cultivator from the Qin He Palace. After that, he glanced at Yi Futian and said, "Since you've already severed your relationship with the Dongshao continent, why are you still here?" The crowd was now focused on Yi Futian. The incident at the Heavenly Battle Palace last time clearly irked many people. Now, upon seeing that he was trying to enter the Wangshan watchtower, many were clearly annoyed. Qi Mu from the Alchemy Divine Palace smiled gently as he watched. In the end, he was still affected. He was certain that the people of Wangshan Watchtower would have a bad impression of him due to the incident. The difficulty of Yi Futian entering the Wangshan Watchtower had clearly increased significantly. He could even face early elimination. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Yi Futian glanced at the people, but before he could speak, Lin Qiu walked up and swept a glance at them. "When did it become the turn of all of you to take charge of the affairs of Wangshan Watchtower? Today, when Ren Huangyi came to Wangshan Watchtower, did he have to ask all of you first if he could enter? Are you guys already able to represent the attitude of Wangshan Watchtower?" Yi Futian glanced at the people, but before he could speak, Lin Qiu walked up and swept a glance at them. "When did it become the turn of all of you to take charge of the affairs of Wangshan Watchtower? Today, when Ren Huangyi came to Wangshan Watchtower, did he have to ask all of you first if he could enter? Are you guys already able to represent the attitude of Wangshan Watchtower?" Lin Qiu's words caused the pupils of all the people to contract slightly. He criticized them very harshly. There is also the matter of the Heavenly Battle Palace. You deceived Ren Huangyi. After he arrived, you spoke provocatively and were disrespectful to him. But now, when necessary, you encourage Ren Huangyi to participate in the war. Who do you think you are? Are you better than Ren Huangyi in alchemy, or are you stronger than him? Lin Qiu continued, "That day, you were thoroughly defeated. Knowing that your own strength is not good, are you now looking for someone to take the blame?" His voice was light-hearted, not happy or angry. He seemed exceptionally calm. The other party just wanted to refute, but heard Lin Qiu continue, "Cut the crap. Do you know why Ren Huangyi left? In the eyes of Ren Huangyi, you are just a group of nobodies. Ren Huangyi is not interested in alchemy, yet you wanted him to take action, and what was the result? It was the same in the Heavenly Battle Palace that day. The Renhuangs of the Qin He Palace provoked him. What happened in the end? So, I see that you're still not repentant now. It seems that you haven't learned your lesson yet." The people looked at Lin Qiu. This series of words blocked their words back. This guy did not seem to be a nosy person, but he had such a glib tongue. Yi Futian did not care to be with them? After listening to Lin Qiu's words, the people around them vaguely felt that they might have misunderstood Yi Futian. The truth was that the other party kept provoking, and he was too lazy to have contact with the other party before leaving? Lin Qiu, no matter how clever you are, you can't change the fact that he ended his relationship with us and avoided fighting, a strong person from the Qin He Palace coldly said. Did he want to get rid of that matter by talking his way out of it? Avoiding and not fighting? Yi Futian raised his head and swept his gaze at the person who spoke. Those indifferent eyes were filled with contempt as he opened his mouth. "Are you also worthy of fighting?" Saying that, he moved his gaze away without looking at the other party again and walked towards the front. Lin Qiu, Since you also know it's a bunch of nothing, why bother with more words and waste your energy? Lin Qiu knew how strong Yi Futian was, so he helped him brag a bit. Anyway, he would be exposed soon. Then he would see how the other party would react. He did not expect Yi Futian himself to say such arrogant words. This time, it would be interesting. These Renawangs were probably even more upset now. He was increasingly looking forward to it. Yi Futian told him previously that the arrogant Renhuang at the northern land was an unworthy opponent. The eyes of everyone from all sides were all staring at Yi Futian. This guy was simply arrogant to the extreme. There were many Renawangs here. The major top powers of Wangdu and the top figures of all continents were present. He even said wildly that they, who stood at the top of the Dongxiao continent, are a bunch of rabble-rousers. Since that's the case, I'm looking forward to your next performance. The strong man from Qin He Palace responded indifferently, and all the cultivators from all sides also looked at Yi Futian. Once he entered Wangshan Watchtower, they would be able to know the truth. Having been so arrogant, if he did not have real strength, he would be miserable. This time, Yi Futian offended a lot of people. In one direction, the goddess Emperor Yi also took a look at Yi Futian, thinking that Yi Futian was really different. Cultivating in Wangdu, she had also seen all kinds of people and many top cultivators. No one was like Yi Futian. Facing top cultivators from all sides, it was as if he was independent of the world. That feeling was like no one could really get his attention. Whether it was the Heavenly Battle Palace's Yang Qian, the Alchemy Divine Palace's successor Qi Mu, or those powerful Renawangs from the northern land, he had never regarded them properly. He was extremely arrogant. She was also very much looking forward to what kind of strength this level 4 human emperor actually had to allow him to disregard everyone from Wangdu. Just at that time, at the faraway Wangshan Watchtower, several extremely majestic figures appeared in the firmament. They gazed directly through the void, looking at these people coming. Although they were far apart, it was as if they were close at hand. "Start the formation," said someone above Wangshan Watchtower. In an instant, the world changed, from the outside of the Wangshan Watchtower to the inside. That empty place filled with wisps of the aura of the Great Way and became indistinct. In front, one could see the stairs to the Wangshan Watchtower and palaces. They seemed to be close at hand, but the people of Wangdu knew that they only seemed to be close at hand. If they wanted to step onto the stairs and enter the Wangshan Watchtower, it would be difficult to do. At this moment, a great formation appeared in the Wangshan Watchtower, and only those who had broken through this great clan-guarding matrix will be qualified to go up to the Wangshan Watchtower and have the opportunity to listen to the preaching of the Millet Emperor. That had been the rule for many years. Those who seek the Tao can now enter. A voice came from the void in the distance. At once, countless people looked ahead and did not think about things about Yi Futian anymore. The Wangshan Watchtower was open. It was an extremely rare opportunity. He wondered who would be able to grasp it. The various forces stepped forward and stepped into that spell matrix. Yi Futian perceived the spell matrix, which formed a space of its own. It was marvelous, and a master-level person definitely set up this spell matrix. "Go in," the Alchemy Emperor said to Yi Futian, and he nodded. A group of people stepped forward and walked towards the front. The Alchemy Emperor, Goddess Donglai, and several of them watched from the outside. Not only they were like that, but the various factions were also like that too. If they could break through that spell matrix, they would have broken through it many years ago. Many top figures of the older generation had listened to the teachings of the Millet Emperor. This time, the people who came were the younger generations of their respective factions and those most confident of breaking through. Because of the limited number of places, they would only choose the most promising and powerful Renawangs to enter each year. When Yi Futian stepped out of it, he felt that everything was changing. The matrix of the Great Way seemed to have forged an illusionary realm. This was no longer the world he saw before, but a completely imaginary world. This area was vast and endless, with many buildings and mountain peaks. Gazing into the distance, at the farthest place within his gaze, only vaguely could he see a heaven's gate, like a door leading to the Wangshan Watchtower. His eyes changed abruptly with a touch of demonic color as he tried to see through the illusion. He was able to see that the buildings here and this heaven and earth were made of the power of the Great Way. But he could not look through completely. He could see, but he could not exit and was still stuck in the spell matrix. An invisible will might appeared in heaven and earth. It seemed that countless Tao air currents were flowing to and falling on their bodies, making them all bear an invisible oppressive force. Be careful. Someone will attack. It's the cultivators of the Wangshan Watchtower. Lin Qiu instructed Yi Futian. In addition to that, we have to be careful of the cultivators of other powers. Yi Futian nodded. He probably already knew something before coming. To enter the Wangshan Watchtower, he needed to walk through this clan-guarding matrix. And in this matrix, there would be cultivators of the Wangshan Watchtower attacking them. They were in the light, and the other side was in the dark. A group of people spread out in formation, not standing together. On Yi Futian's side, there were Xia Qingyuan, Beigong Shuang, Bai Mu, and Zifeng. Judging from strength, naturally, Zifeng was the strongest. Buzz. At this moment, someone was extremely fast and turned into a bolt of lightning as he tried to break through quickly. However, a giant hand slammed down from the firmament suddenly, seemingly descending from out of nowhere. The giant golden hand covered a portion of the sky and hid the sun. There were many runes on the giant impenetrable hand that slammed down. The cultivator's retreat was blocked. Bearing the extremely strong will might, his divine wheel of the great path erupted. His body shot directly through the void and crashed toward the sky above head-on. Clang. A loud sound came out as that person who rushed into the forefront of the cultivators was directly blasted into the ground by the palm of the Great Way. His body was dented, and he looked very miserable. The next moment, a golden hand appeared in the void, directly grabbing him and taking him away. Seeing this scene, the various powerful cultivators became cautious. Needless to say, the Wangshan Watchtower cultivators were powerful. Those who could enter the Wangshan Watchtower were probably more talented than a majority of them. Breaking through the formation was no simple matter. As they were trying to break through the matrix, outside the Wangshan Watchtower, another vast group of figures appeared. The auras of these people were scary, and many recognized them. They were the Renhuangs of the northern land that descended upon the heavenly battle palace that day. However, they had never seen the few people at the head of the group in the heavenly battle palace before. However, with just one glance, the people knew where these people came from. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 1972, Interspatial Encounter. Chapter 1972, Interspatial Encounter. After the Wangshan Watchtower became the top sacred place in the Dongxiao continent, the Millet Emperor started preaching here. For many years, countless mighty figures have entered the Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate. At this time, on top of one of the buildings in the Wangshan Watchtower, there stood many Renhuangs, each appearing in a different position, very scattered. Their eyes were looking at the spell matrix in front of them at this moment, which hid the heaven and earth within the spatial world in the Wangshan Watchtower. They could clearly see everything within the spatial world in the spell matrix, and many Renhuangs were releasing powerful auras of the Great Way, launching attacks toward the spatial world from time to time. This time, I don't know if there are any powerful people who come to the Wangshan Watchtower to seek the way, a Renhuang smiled and said. As he spoke, he raised his hand and attacked. A huge pagoda came down directly into the formation and attacked a Renhuang of the same realm as him. This spell matrix was a test of combat power for those who sought the way. They would select people of the same realm to attack. Of course, this was not the law. If they encountered powerful people, people of higher realms would also strike as they wish. But the strongest people of the Wangshan Watchtower would see in their eyes who was strong and who was weak. They could be screened in the law battle. They could even enter the spell matrix to attack. But of course, generally speaking, they would not do so unless they met someone who interested them very much. In the front position at the lower space of the Wangshan Watchtower, an old man with an immortal style was sitting quietly there, with several strong people standing beside him in the left and right direction. He swept his gaze ahead and said, "They're here." The old man looked into the distance. Beyond the spell formation, Outside of the Wangshan watchtower, a group of powerful people appeared there. They knew who those people were. They were the powerful people from the northern land, led by the ancient royal family of the Yen kingdom. "Don't bother," the old man responded. "Yes." The people next to him nodded. They wanted to see what the ancient royal family of the Yen kingdom wanted to do by leading the strong people from the northern land. Now, they just needed to wait and see what happens. No matter what can the ancient royal family of the Yen kingdom do? If the master of the ancient royal family of the Yen kingdom did not come, who could affect the Wangshan watchtower with the Millet Emperor around? Therefore, even though they knew that the other party had arrived, the Wangshan watchtower did not take any action but just let nature take its course. If they also wanted to break through the spell matrix, the Wangshan watchtower did not mind. They could make use of the opportunity to see how strong the Renhuangs from the northern land were. Two completely different worlds existed within the spell matrix and outside it. At this moment, Dao attacks broke out continuously behind the spell matrix. Many strong people were attacked from outside the spell matrix as if they were suddenly bombarded from the sky. All the human emperors who came in were doing their best, not daring to be the least bit careless. Many Renhuangs had fallen to the sudden attacks and were taken away. They were probably thrown out of the spell matrix and lost the right to enter the Wangshan watchtower to seek the Dao. Disregarding whether they could enter the Wangshan watchtower to cultivate, being thrown out like that was a rather humiliating thing for them. Yi Futian seemed to be a bit lucky. Since he stepped in the formation, he had not been attacked so far. Near him, Lin Qiu and Xia Qingyuan had been attacked to varying degrees. He found that the strength of those Dao attacks and the realm of the people inside were matched, meaning that the other party was controlling their attacks and will not attack randomly. Otherwise, if the top people of the Wangshan watchtower attacked, how many people could withstand it? Just after Yi Futian strode forward in a relaxed manner, a powerful will might suddenly locked onto him. In the next moment, an extremely radiant divine blade of light descended from the sky. It pierced through the void directly and left a ray of light in the space. From top to bottom, the blade of light instantly engulfed Yi Futian. Just like before, this attack was a level 4 Renhuang plane strength attack, and its attack strength was one of the stronger ones in the 4th level of the Renhuang plane. Yi Futian looked up and directly eyed the blade of light descending. His pair of deep eyes as brilliant as stars were extremely calm. Even if it were a cultivator of the Wangshan watchtower, it would probably be challenging to find an existence of the same realm that could threaten him. Buzz. Yi Futian stood in place without moving. A divine blade of light directly erupted from his body, shooting upward against the trend. His body became extremely sharp, like a divine sword of the Great Way as it split the sky. The blade of light swept through, and the blade of light that shot towards him was torn apart. The Dao was annihilated, the divine sword that shot towards him was directly decimated. The blade of light that remained was the blade of light that was released from Yi Futian's body. He took a step and continued to move forward. It was as if this blade of light did not hinder him in the slightest. However, when he took a step, the firmament suddenly blossomed into a gorgeous swordsmanship haze. Lifting his head to look, he saw countless divine swords coming from beyond the sky clanging in the firmament. Many divine blades of light glowed down, making the space he was in was turned into a very strong swordsmanship space. Obviously, the Renhuang who struck him outside the spell matrix had intensified his attack, and the sword that shot toward Yi Futian was easily broken, so it must have been a bit humiliating for the person who cultivated in the Wangshan watchtower. This time, the swordsmanship aura was obviously more powerful. But blades of light spilled down, countless divine swords in the void turned into swordsmanship streams of light, dropping down from the firmament. Each sword turned into a ray of light. Many divine swords attacking at the same time seemed to turn into a terrifying sword matrix, like a meteor rain of swords. At this moment, it was as if Yi Futian's world had only blades of light and was buried by this meteor sword veil. The swords were like rain, flooding Yi Futian's body. Yi Futian's white clothes fluttered, and his silver hair flew. He still stood there quietly as his body still did not move a bit. A more terrifying wisp of swordsmanship aura blossomed from his body. 10,000 swords sounded together as if infinite sword wills were born around him, creating a powerful resonance. They formed a terrifying sword chi storm that rotated around his body. The rain of swords fell and directly entered the sword chi storm around him and was directly swept into it as if it had directly become a part of this swordsmanship storm, resonating here and turning into his sword. The storm was getting stronger and stronger, and the terrifying storm made the surrounding space filled with suffocating destructive power. Many people glanced towards the direction where Yi Futian was, and people outside could also see the scene inside the spell matrix. They secretly said that this Yi Futian's strength was really strong. No wonder he was so arrogant. The powerful swordsmen in training in the Wangshan Watchtower unleashed the destructive power of their swordsmanship, but the swordsmanship was directly assimilated and sucked into his sword chi storm as he suppressed his opponent's swordsmanship. This meant that Yi Futian's swordsmanship was not below his opponent's. However, because his opponent was attacking into the spell matrix through the air, it was not possible to say that Yi Futian was necessarily stronger. But even so, the vast majority of those who entered the spell matrix were passive resistors, and there were few Renhuangs like Yi Futian who could directly suppress the opponent's Dao attacks. Outside the spell matrix, a swordsmanship Renhuang's gaze pierced through the void and looked at Yi Futian inside the spell matrix. When Yi Futian looked up, this look gave him an illusion, as if it was looking at him through the spell matrix. Those indifferent eyes shone with a touch of extremely strong self-confidence, and he never took their attacks seriously. The Renhuang had sword wills circling his body. As he stepped out, it seemed like he was going to turn into a sword. "Wait," someone interrupted said, "you want to enter the spell matrix so soon? This person is pretty strong. I will go and fight him." The swordsmanship Renhuang said. "Interesting, someone made you unable to resist and want to enter the spell matrix so quickly." A Renhuang smiled and remarked, "Your sword doesn't seem to be very good." The swordsmanship Renhuang raised his head and swept his sharp gaze at his companion. He smiled as he replied, "Why don't you try?" "Sure." He gazed at Yi Futian, who was in the spell matrix. "A swordsmanship cultivator, eh?" The light of the divine wheel of the great path shone on his body. An incomparably lofty war god illusion raised his arm and blasted out directly downward. In a flash, a huge hand went towards the spell formation, and a huge word appeared above this big hand. "Suppress," it read. The moment the word entered the formation, the swordsmanship storm around Yi Futian stopped. The huge word slapped down, covering the sky as all the surrounding Dao was suppressed. It was as if the space he was in and all the power in it was going to be suppressed. This space became heavier than ever. Rumble. The runes slammed down towards Yi Futian's body as wisps of swordsmanship aura were suppressed and decimated. The sword wills around Yi Futian seemed to be suppressed by the aura of the Great Way. He swept his gaze towards the rune, then raised his hand and pointed towards the sky. In an instant, the swordsmanship storm turned into a terrifying cyclone, and 10,000 swords roared together, turning into a single sword, shooting upward against the trend. One sword was born, and 10,000 laws were destroyed. Bang! With a loud sound, the rune was destroyed directly under the sword. The radiant divine sword shot all the way up directly towards the spell matrix overhead and directly pointed at the Wangshan Watchtower's Renhuangs outside the spell matrix. However, this spell matrix was irreversible, and his sword could not get out. How arrogant! Outside, the swordsmanship Renhuang looked at Yi Futian's eyes and the sword. He smiled, looking at the Renhuang who had struck, and said, "How? Your attack, it doesn't seem to be good." That Renhuang coldly snorted and looked at Yi Futian inside the spell matrix. This guy was indeed not simple. He was able to break their Dao attack directly, and it seemed that defeating him through the spell matrix would be a little difficult. Unless they personally entered the spell matrix. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1973, Barging In. Chapter 1973, Barging in. Yi Futian continued to move forward after breaking through the foreign Dao attacks. His white clothes were fluttering, and he looked dashing and unrestrained. In the surroundings, many people were looking at Yi Futian. This person is powerful. Although he was arrogant and disregarded everyone, he did have the strength to back it up. Otherwise, he would not dare to be so reckless. But even so, his phrase, the rabble, offended many people from the different factions. It probably would not be so easy for him to enter the Wangshan watchtower to cultivate. Only then, several people came towards the direction where Yi Futian was, vaguely forming a closed circle around Yi Futian, causing those watching the battle outside the spell matrix to reveal a flash of puzzlement. It seemed these people were going to make a move on Yi Futian. They needed to break through the spell matrix to enter the Wangshan watchtower. During this period, there were no laws, and any means could be used. The Wangshan watchtower did not make any laws. Of course, the Wangshan watchtower Renhuang's outside of the spell matrix was, in fact, secretly controlling all of this. Even if there were no laws, they were able to control the situation inside. For example, they could decide whether or not to attack the Renhuang inside, and they could also decide what level of people would launch the attack and against whom. That would enable them to directly influence the battlefield within the spell matrix. If inside, there was a battle between strong people with obvious realm gaps, and people of higher realms moved against Renhuangs of lower realms, Wangshan watchtower cultivators would normally intervene and directly launch an attack against the higher realm Renhuangs, which the people of Wangdu understood. If some of the Renhuangs in the spell matrix broke out to fight with each other, then at that time, the Renhuangs of the Wangshan watchtower over the spell matrix would instead stop striking and would let them fight on their own as long as the difference in realm was not too great. Therefore, those who were walking towards Yi Futian did not have any psychological pressure. According to their speculation, before, Yi Futian had showed extraordinary fighting power, so even if several of them were to strike against him at the same time, the people outside would not interfere. As they guessed, the strong people outside the spell formation stopped attacking when they saw someone walking towards Yi Futian, and they were curious about Yi Futian's strength, so they wanted to use this opportunity to take a look. The Renhuangs who were walking towards Yi Futian were all the Renhuangs who were in the Heavenly Battle Palace that day. All of them were forces that had a better relationship with the Alchemy Divine Palace. 2 Renhuangs of the 4th realm and 2 of the 5th realm approached Yi Futian from different directions. The moment their auras of the Great Way erupted, an oppressive to the extreme Great Path domain was formed with Yi Futian's body as the center. They really are nobodies. Yi Futian continued to move forward without paying attention, but Lin Qiu and the rest had already struck. The 3 of them moved directly towards their opponents. Seeing this scene, more Renhuangs were surging to this side. Instead of fighting with the Renhuangs outside the Wangshan watchtower, fighting with people here was the same. Yi Futian also had many strong people around him. All of them were cultivators who followed the Alchemy Emperor from the Taiyuan continent. Let me see how strong the cultivators of the Tower of the Alchemy Emperor are. At this time, a voice came out, and a figure appeared in the void. It was clearly the Alchemy Divine Palace's disciple Zhong Fan. He was the demonic figure who was refining pills with Grandmaster Zihe that day. When his aura of the Great Way was released, the flames of the Way enveloped this void. Their power was terrifying, and they made the temperature of the whole space climb sharply. Zi Feng! Yi Futian shouted. He had no intention to make a move himself. Beside Yi Futian, the long phoenix skirt on Zi Feng's body flew. A pair of divine wings suddenly appeared behind her. Terrifying flames of the Way filled her body, and at this moment, she was incomparably gorgeous, like a phoenix goddess. In a flash, she caused many cultivators to look at her. What a strong aura! Those Renhuangs were trembling inside, and the next moment, they saw the gorgeous phoenix wings flickering and moving. The raging divine fire directly engulfed the void, and as Zhong Fan stood there, he saw his body wrapped in an illusory Great Path domain. An incomparably huge divine bird phoenix appeared in this Great Path domain, covering the sky and flooding this space. A loud and clear call of the phoenix sounded, stinging his eardrums, and Zhong Fan only felt his spiritual soul tremble as the huge divine phoenix's wings swept out. Zhong Fan's power of the Great Way was cut and shattered as blood spurted out. A bloody wound was torn out from his body as he was sent flying. If not for Zifeng not going for the kill, he would probably be unable to resist her attacks and be dead by now. This is a phoenix, and it's so strong? Many people were shocked. Zifeng's body floated in the air. As her wings beat behind her back, that boundless huge phoenix shadow covered the sky, enveloping the boundless space. Another call of the phoenix sounded, and those Renhuangs who came towards Futian all saw a phoenix shadow grabbing towards them. The suffocating power of the Great Way made them feel unable to resist. The sounds of poofing continued. Just as they felt, figures were directly slapped out as they spit blood, and their faces turned pale. Even Lin Qiu and the others froze. Their bodies floated in the air as they stared blankly at Zifeng. Had she finished doing what she wanted to do? Before, Zifeng had been quietly following Futian and had not shown her aura, let alone her strength. No one knew how strong she was, yet this sudden outburst made everyone freeze. The phoenix goddess who followed behind Futian was so strong? The body of Zifeng was still suspended in the air. She gazed around the crowd, and her pair of gorgeous divine phoenix eyes dazzled with the flames of the way, noble and cold. They were filled with contempt for everyone as if to confirm the words of Futian before. At that time, if Zifeng attacked, they would not necessarily lose to that Renhuang from the northern land. Did Futian need to avoid him on purpose? Perhaps, he indeed had not wanted to participate in the battle. If you want to attack later, find some guys with a higher cultivation level. These guys are not worthy of my attention, Futian remarked while sweeping a glance at the crowd and ignoring the strong people. As to who he was talking about, he would let the other side interpret it for themselves. As long as they were hostile to him, then, naturally, they were all included. He did not even seem to care about all the mighty figures in the entire Dongshao continent. Futian continued to move forward as he spoke, and the strong people around him also followed him. At this time, even the Wangshan Watchtower Renhuangs outside the spell matrix were also shocked. Many Renhuangs stared down and spoke, "Interesting. Want to go down for a walk?" It was impossible to truly feel how strong Zifeng's combat power was here. Only by entering the spell matrix and colliding head-on could they know. On top of that, how strong Futian was likewise a mystery. Although he had countered the two Renhuang's attacks before, no one knew how much strength he had used. Dorush. They're going in. Some people looked into the distance. Outside the Wangshan Watchtower, those strong people who came from the northern land were already moving. The person at the head of the group gazed in the direction of the Wangshan Watchtower and said, "We came from the northern land to visit Senior Millet Emperor. Use the ancient road and enter the spell matrix with the Renhuangs of the Dongshao continent to receive the test of the Great Way." After saying that, they did not wait for the permission of the people of the Wangshan Watchtower and directly stepped forward into the spell matrix. The other strong people outside showed a flash of strange color. The cultivators of the northern land forcefully stepped into the spell matrix. Coupled with the previous battle in the Heavenly Battle Palace, they were going to show the cultivators of the Dongshao continent who was boss. The moment the Renhuangs of the northern land stepped into the spell matrix, they immediately and simultaneously unleashed a strong aura of the Great Way, heading forward. Chapter 1974, One Punch. Chapter 1974, One Punch. The roar of the Great Path's violent resonance continued to erupt inside the matrix, and Renhuang from the northern land rushed into it, initiating the vicious battle. The cultivators of various forces in the Dongshao continent no longer fought against one another but were united against the outside force. Otherwise, they would all suffer miserably. After the cultivators from the northern land had initiated their attack, they discovered that the cultivators from Wangshan Watchtower, who were watching outside the matrix, no longer interfered. Its significance was not lost. This was essentially handing the battlefield over to them as a kind of assessment. The matrix itself was Wangshan Watchtower's test to them. To enter the Wangshan Watchtower to cultivate, one must pass the matrix. Except that the assessment this time was a little different. Renhuang from the northern land had replaced the Renhuang of Wangshan Watchtower, entering the Matrix's battlefield to participate in the battle. The cultivators from Qinhe Palace did not continue their attack on Yi Futian and his party. They now turned their attention to the Renhuang, who were attacking violently. Many people were already on the move, and each of them had found opponents of a comparable realm and started a law battle within the bounds of the Matrix. For a moment, the space inside the Matrix seemed about to fall apart, on the brink of a complete riot that could crush the sky and the earth. The cultivators outside the Wangshan Watchtower were observing the dizzying battles that erupted at the same time. They wanted to watch each battle in detail and didn't want to miss anything, but the actions were too fast. For this great battle that exploded at the same time in different battle locations. The only choice was to pick a battlefield to observe with a glance at the other battlefields from time to time. After all, divine consciousness was unable to invade inside the Matrix, so they could only watch it with their naked eyes. These Renhuang from the northern land are quite wild, someone remarked. Well, the cultivators from the ancient royal family of the Yen Kingdom have come here in person. That young man in the lead is surrounded by many cultivators, so he must be a royal member of the ancient royal family from the Yen Kingdom, leading a group of Renhuang to seek the way. If so, they must have selected the strongest among their people. But we are different. Many of our powerful people have already entered Wangshan Watchtower before, or they are currently cultivating at Wangshan Watchtower. This time, only some of these powerful men had entered the Matrix, not a carefully selected elite as the other party. Someone who was more rational saw the key to the battle. They had the opportunity to enter Wangshan Watchtower every year, and many powerful men had entered to cultivate one time or another. This year, there were just some excellent characters who attended. However, it was a different story with the other party. Led by the ancient royal family of the Yen Kingdom, they must be commanding a powerful group of Renhuang from all the top forces in Yenyun continent to descend upon the city. From this standpoint, they were at a disadvantage. Under such fierce attacks, I am afraid they will be entirely wiped out. A cultivator frowned. They were from some of the major forces in Wangdu, and many elders from these forces did not enter the Matrix, and they had a bad feeling when they saw the progression on the battlefield. The Renhuang from the northern land had great momentum and were extremely ferocious. In different realms, they had been able to cause considerable destruction. This battle was somewhat similar to the law battle at the Heavenly Battle Palace that day. It was as if the battle on that day was the dress rehearsal of the great battle today. The cultivators from the Alchemy Divine Palace gathered in one area but in a scattered formation. After all, their realm varied. Qi Mu, the heir of the Alchemy Divine Palace, stood in the center. He glanced at those imposing Renhuang from the northern land, then turned around to look behind him, where Yi Futian and the others were positioned. Because Yi Futian and his party were traveling the fastest, so that Yi Futian was in the rearmost position when they turned around. In another direction, there were the cultivators from the Heavenly Battle Palace, where Yang Qian, the leader of the Heavenly Battle Palace, was standing there. He had a terrifying aura about him, an extremely tyrannical fighting while surrounding him. He glanced at Yi Futian and the locations of other cultivators, such as Qi Mu of the Alchemy Divine Palace. He said, "You had differences in opinions regarding the affairs that occurred at the Heavenly Battle Palace, but that is all in the past. Now that the cultivators from the northern land have invaded Wangshan Watchtower and see Dongshao continent as nothing with no one to protect it, I'm asking everyone to put aside previous grudges temporarily and face this foe together." Qi Mu and other cultivators from Alchemy Divine Palace looked at Yi Futian and the others, only to hear him say, "I have no opinion." Clearly, he had also felt the might of the other party. Any further internal conflicts would inevitably cause more damages to either party, resulting in their disqualifications. "What does Emperor Yi think?" Yang Qian asked Yi Futian. "Not interested," Yi Futian replied, calm and nonchalant. He glanced at the cultivators of the northern land, who had come from afar. No one could stop him from seeing the Millet Emperor, not even those cultivators who came from the Yenyun continent of the north. He didn't need to partner up with anyone, especially not those people who had meant to do him harm earlier. When the cultivators around him heard his words, their eyes sharpened slightly. They had already made concessions and gave him a way out, but still, Yi Futian was so arrogant. Yang Qian frowned, a little displeased, and said, Emperor Yi, although there were some misunderstandings previously, the important thing now is the situation at hand. The situation at hand? Yi Futian looked at the other. I remembered I told you before that I am not from Wangdu, nor am I a cultivator of Dongshao continent. Yang Qian had nothing to say when he heard what Yi Futian had to say. Yi Futian was serious. He still saw himself as a separate entity from Dongshao continent, not with the other cultivators. When Lin Qiu heard Yi Futian's words, he couldn't help but smiled and said, Before, when there were no cultivators from the northern land, you had joined forces to fight against him, drawing a clear boundary. Now that the people from the northern land are here, you wanted to leverage his power? How quickly you change your tune. You think you are so much better than everyone else, some cultivators remarked next to Lin Qiu and Yi Futian. Even at a time like this, they were still acting like this had nothing to do with them. Not far from the sky above, the terrifying aura of the Great Path permeated, and several Renhuang attacked in this direction. One of them was the cultivator from the northern land royal family. He glanced at Yi Futian and recalled that he had seen this man before, on that day when they entered the heavenly battle palace. At the time, this man evaded battle and left soon after. No need to argue. We are all going out. It seems that we should go to the Millet Emperor for advice. The royal cultivator sounded domineering, golden light shining upon his body. An overpowering might spread out as he stepped forward. Heaven and earth boomed, and the void trembled. Besides him, there were many cultivators around who struck from different directions at the same time. But Qi Mu of the Alchemy Divine Palace drifted backward without any intention to engage in battle, and the rest of the cultivators from the Alchemy Divine Palace followed his example. Other cultivators retreated when they saw their action and gave up their positions as well, an act that caught many by surprise. After they backed away, Yi Futian was facing squarely at the other party. In other words, Yi Futian and his people were directly facing these cultivators from the northern land. Sensing the aura coming from Yi Futian, the cultivator who belonged to the royal family from the northern land swept a glance at him. A touch of dominance flashed in those eyes as he took a step that made the void tremble. It was as if he could step through the void. That day Yi Futian avoided the battle. Today, where would he go? Qi Mu and the others were looking at Yi Futian as well. This time, he could not avoid it, and he must fight no matter what. He was frozen and filled with great shock. Could this power be so terrifying? Even the cultivators from Heavenly Battle Palace and Alchemy Divine Palace trembled violently in their hearts. However, Yi Futian surveyed everyone around him and said indifferently, Does this level worthy to battle with me if you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc.? Please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 1975, Melee. Chapter 1975, Melee One Punch. The Renhuang that has been so arrogant at the Heavenly Battle Palace, who had crushed several opponents of the same level in Dongshao continent, was knocked down by Yi Futian with a single punch, unable to fight back. That day when Yi Futian left, had that really been to avoid fighting? Dared not he to fight? With a single punch that could knock down his opponent. Would he deliberately find excuses to avoid fighting? He didn't fight because he didn't want to fight or didn't care to fight. Not only were the people on the battlefield stunned, but many cultivators from Dongshao continent outside the battlefield also had their eyes glued to the same place, staring at the man in white in total shock. He stood there quietly, ignoring these cultivators, finding no need to partner with any of them. Could it be that what Lin Qiu said is true? Someone whispered. He doesn't fight because the cultivators of Heavenly Battle Palace and Alchemy Divine Palace moved against him and used his power in the law battle, so he left in protest. It's also possible that he thinks the others were not worthy of fighting with him at all, said someone else. If Yi Futian were not so strong, his case would have been weak. But now, he had proven his own strength, so whatever he did before was justified, and no one could doubt him. Of course, it was indeed the case. He had no reason to avoid fighting, just his disdain for law battles and his disdain for those from Heavenly Battle Palace and Alchemy Divine Palace. So, Who was this person? Someone looked in the direction where Alchemy Emperor was and saw him standing with his hands behind his back. Goddess Donglai stood behind him quietly, her eyes looking into the matrix as well. No one knew Yi Futian's true strength better than Goddess Donglai, and she wasn't worried in the least. He would undoubtedly prove himself in this matrix with his strength and see the Millet Emperor as he deserved. Now, the cultivators from Yenyun continent were here to attack. Even the cultivators of the ancient imperial family of Yen had arrived. Were they here for the matter regarding Eastern Deity Island? However, now that he had made it to Wangshan Watchtower, she no longer worried about Yi Futian's safety. On the battlefield, Yi Futian independently occupied one side of the void, with many cultivators in the surrounding. Yang Qian, the young palace lord of Heavenly Battle Palace, looked at him and found no words. Was this level unworthy to fight with him? Qi Mu and other cultivators from Alchemy Divine Palace also looked at Yi Futian. Obviously, they had underestimated Yi Futian's strength. Not only could Yi Futian battle the royal cultivator from the northern land, but he also ended the battle with just a single punch. Would Yi Futian's victory mean that those at the same level from various forces were also not worthy of engaging him in law battles? His line of sight was directed at the northern Renhuang in the sky above. There was a brilliant golden brilliance blooming above his body. In an instant, the golden light filled the sky, like the light of Buddhism, with the endless sound of Buddha ringing in the air. The Renhuang from the northern land frowned. He felt a force similar to his own power of the Great Path. As his eyes surveyed the land beneath him, suddenly his expression changed, and he became extremely fierce and wild. A giant beast that was extremely wild appeared above the sky, like a real dragon, but also like a lion, with 4 hoofs, standing above the firmament, as a roar came out of its bloody basin of a mouth. Countless sound waves of the Great Path swept through the space like endless sharp swords of the sound wave. It tore through the void and shattered spiritual souls. In just an instant, Yi Futian's body seemed to be submerged by invisible sound waves. At the same time, the Renhuang on both sides also launched an attack of the Great Path on Yi Futian. Cultivators from all 3 sides attacked Yi Futian simultaneously. How unforgiving! Many who were outside fixed their attention on the battlefield where Yi Futian was at. Because of his independent ways, he was now being attacked by both forces. Men from Dongshao continent and the cultivators from the northern land were now fighting against him. But at this moment, the golden divine brilliance on Yi Futian was getting even more radiant, as sounds of Buddha was heard, and a Buddhist aura lingered in the air. Get away! With a loud shout accompanied by the roar of the terrifying beast, an infinite and domineering Buddha suddenly appeared above the sky. It was Vajra demon-slaying rhythm. The infinite ancient Buddha released the endless glory of Buddhism, rocking the mountains and rivers. The Buddha's light and rhythm pierced the beast, and then its body was pulverized. Not only that, the spiritual souls of that northern Renhuang and the other 2 Renhuang who attacked Yi Futian trembled violently as if they might collapse and pulverize at any time, while the Great Path was also destroyed. A rustling sound was heard, and with the blooming of the Vajra demon-slaying rhythm, a giant divine tree appeared above Yi Futian's head. Numerous branches and leaves spread out, and captured the other 3 Renhuang in an instant. The power of the Great Path wanted to smash through, but these leaves were extremely resilient, locking their bodies in place within the void. The branches and vines furled, and 3 figures were being wrapped up and delivered in front of Yi Futian. Yi Futian glanced at them, and his indifferent eyes made them realize that even if their cultivation was stronger than Yi Futian, they were not his equal after all. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. In a few short moments, the elusive aura of the ancient tree was everywhere in this vast world, as if a divine tree had been planted here, turning it into a domain of the Great Path. But a muffled sound came out, as thousands of phantoms stepping at the same time above the firmament, a golden brilliance bloomed upon their bodies. They had the same movement, raising their arms as golden light screens flowed upon those arms. They were tinged with a terrifying breath of shattering the great path. Finally, under countless gazes, the other man moved with the many phantoms that moved at the same time in the same fashion. They delivered a blow downward, and in that instant, this corner of the sky seemed on the verge of collapsing. The crowd saw the phantoms of the Sky Lord running through the void, blasting their attacks at Yi Futian. Simultaneously, a horrific invisible sound wave swept out, causing those phantoms to explode and then pulverized. Many wore a shocked expression on their faces as they beheld this unbelievable scene in awe. The greatest sound was usually inaudible. They could not hear the sound of this sound wave, but they could feel it. In the space shrouded by the ancient tree, an exquisitely cold and dark aura appeared in the domain of the great path, which froze those elusive phantoms that had dove downward, turning them into icy frost. Before the attacks had reached Yi Futian, they had already turned to ice. The crowd saw Yi Futian's body slowly levitating, and a terrifying storm of swordsmanship appeared around him. Wherever he passed, those elusive phantoms continued to shatter and explode. Thousands of phantoms dissipated at a breakneck speed. And in a short time, everything had turned into dust. Soon, the Ren Huang of the Seventh Realm appeared in person. He looked at what was happening in front of him in utter horror, as all the external phantoms of obfuscation turned into dust and disappeared in an instant. However, he had no time to be in shock. Before he knew it, a sword with flawless swordsmanship had arrived in front of him. A wildly violent power of the great path exploded fiercely as his body turned into an indestructible golden form, suppressing the great path with its power. Both of his fists blast through the air to block the sword strike. As the sword fell, a sharp sizzling sound was heard. This sword seemed to have integrated thousands of sword will between heaven and earth, converging them into a single sword. The golden form shattered, and the fists emerged bloodied. The sword continued traveling forward, slashing the arms. It slammed into the body of the great path above. Cracks appeared as a golden divine glory was observed by the crowd. In the next moment, the sword finally stopped, but that Ren Huang of the Seventh Realm was knocked out into the faraway distance, standing motionlessly, with blood spurting from his chest. His body was filled with terrifying, destructive sword will. "Is this your strike?" "He is not," the Alchemy Emperor replied calmly. "Then, where is he from?" asked the other party. The Alchemy Emperor glanced at him. His gaze suddenly became extremely sharp. Was an elder of Alchemy Divine Palace in the position to act so presumptuous towards him? "Are you questioning me?" asked the Alchemy Emperor as a powerful pressure emanated from his body. His long robes actually fluttered even though there was no wind. This made the other party realize their place. "I was merely curious." "May Alchemy Emperor clear things up for us," the other party continued saying. However, Alchemy Emperor ignored the other party. He swept an indifferent glance at the other party before shifting his gaze away. He continued looking at the matrix. Even he was not clear as to the extent of Yi Futian's abilities. Only Goddess Donglai, who was standing behind him, knew. Yi Futian's power was beyond his expectations. He decimated the various cultivators single-handedly. "Alchemy Emperor, you still have connections to the Dongshao continent. The person whom you have brought here is acting in such a manner. Don't you think it is inappropriate?" questioned an elder from Qin He Palace, an ugly expression on his face. They had suffered heavy losses and were almost completely wiped out. "Should I instruct him to stand there and allow the members of Qin He Palace to beat him up without retaliating?" retorted Alchemy Emperor as he swept a cold look at the other party. He replied, "You have cultivated for so many years and are of a ripe old age. Yet, such words can be uttered from that mouth of yours?" The other party had a displeased look on their face, but they could not retort. After all, their members had attacked Yi Futian first but instead faced a bloodbath now. If this continues, the Ren Huang of the Northern Land will act even more unscrupulously, commented a cultivator from Heavenly Battle Palace as he looked at the battlefield. If they did not have this conflict before and Yi Futian was on their side, he would have been a great asset. Such a shame. Now, their Dongshao continent forces were facing a bloodbath, making things even easier for the Renhuangs of the northern land. No matter how powerful Yi Futian was, he was still only one man. Among the cultivators from the northern land, there were also the forces of the royal family of the Yenyun continent. The cultivators of the Great Yen ancient royal family had personally arrived. Those who have been eliminated would have been useless even if they remained. Now, on the battlefield, there are still cultivators from the Wangshan Watchtower. In addition to Yi Futian, their lineup will not be weaker than that of the Renhuangs from the northern land. They just happen to eliminate the useless folk, the Alchemy Emperor commented. His monotonous voice contained a hint of mockery. Many cultivators from Qin He Palace, as well as Alchemy Divine Palace, looked towards Alchemy Emperor.